Okay, so you want to own a British farm. You have watched the television shows. You have seen the celebrities buying hundreds of acres in the Cotswolds and making it look like a hilarious but ultimately rewarding adventure. You drive out to the countryside on a Sunday. You see the rolling green hills bordered by ancient hedgerows. You see the tractors moving slowly across the horizon. And you think, this is the life. Fresh air, honest hard work, growing food for the nation, and owning a piece of the earth. You look at farm shops selling organic carrots and artisan sausages at premium prices, and you think, there has to be money in this. People always need to eat. The population is growing. Land is a finite resource. The economics must be rock solid. That is the romantic pastoral fantasy that sits in the head of almost everyone who has never actually tried to pull a living out of the dirt. Here is the problem. You are looking at a landscape and mistaking it for a business. The truth is that British farming is not really an agricultural business anymore. It is a highly volatile commodity trading operation attached to a subsidy capture mechanism that happens to involve sheep and wheat. And the moment you understand that difference, everything about how a farm attempts to make money and how it quietly bankrupts generations of families starts to make sense. Let me start with the land itself, because this is the first great illusion of agricultural economics. You look at a farm and you think the land is the asset that produces the income. But in Britain, the value of agricultural land has become completely detached from its ability to grow food. Average arable land in England currently sells for between £8,000 and £11,000 per acre. Pasture land is not far behind. Why is it so expensive? Because you are not just competing with other farmers who want to grow wheat. You are competing with lifestyle buyers who want a country estate. You are competing with institutional investors buying land for carbon offsetting and environmental net gain. And crucially, you are competing with extremely wealthy individuals buying land because agricultural property relief shields it from inheritance tax. This means the entry price for buying a farm is driven by the tax strategies of billionaires, not by the yield of winter barley. If you buy 500 acres of arable land, you are spending roughly £5 million just for the dirt. If you finance that purchase, the interest payments alone will completely obliterate any profit you could ever hope to make from selling crops. This is why the old saying in British agriculture is that farmers live poor and die rich. They sit on an asset worth millions, but they do not have enough cash in the bank to fix the roof on the barn. But let us assume you already own the land, or you secure a farm tenancy where you rent the land from a larger estate. Now you need equipment. This is where the naive mental model of the cheerful farmer on a small red tractor meets the brutal reality of modern agricultural engineering. A modern farm requires machinery that costs as much as commercial aircraft components. A new combine harvester, the machine required to cut and gather your grain, costs between £300,000 and £600,000. And you only use it for about 6 weeks of the year. For the other 10 months, it sits in a shed depreciating. A modern primary tractor with the necessary horsepower, satellite guidance systems, and computer diagnostics costs between £150,000 and £250,000. A 500-acre arable farm needs at least 2 of these. Then you need the implements. The drills, the plows, the sprayers, the trailers, the telehandlers. It is incredibly easy to have £1.5 million tied up in depreciating metal before you have planted a single seed. How do farmers afford this? Finance. The agricultural machinery sector is built on hire purchase agreements and leasing structures. This means the farm is carrying a massive fixed debt obligation every single month. And machinery breaks. When a sensor fails on a modern combine harvester, you cannot just hit it with a spanner. You have to call out a specialized technician with a laptop, and if that breakdown happens in the middle of August, when the wheat is dry and a thunderstorm is coming, that delay can cost you tens of thousands of pounds in lost or degraded crops. You are locked into an expensive technology ecosystem where you bear all the financial risk of ownership, but rely entirely on multinational corporations to keep the machines running. Now we get to the inputs. To grow anything at a commercial scale, you need fertilizer, seed, and chemicals. This exposes the British farmer to global geopolitical volatility in a way that almost no other small business experiences. Take fertilizer. Ammonium nitrate is the lifeblood of modern arable farming. It is made using natural gas. This means the price of fertilizer is directly tethered to the global energy market. When conflicts erupt in Eastern Europe or supply chains are disrupted, the price of natural gas spikes, and the price of fertilizer doubles or triples overnight. A farmer might budget £300 per ton for fertilizer in autumn, but by the time they need to apply it in spring, the price could be £800 per ton. A medium-sized farm might need 100 tons. That is a £50,000 unexpected cash requirement appearing out of nowhere. Then, there is red diesel, the fuel that runs the tractors. A large tractor burns 30 to 50 liters of diesel an hour under heavy load. Plowing and cultivating hundreds of acres requires thousands of liters of fuel. Your costs are entirely dictated by global commodity markets over which you have absolutely no control. So your costs are volatile and largely out of your hands. What about your revenue? This is where the economics become genuinely punishing. When you manufacture a product in a normal business, you calculate your costs, add your margin, and set your price. If your costs go up, you raise your price. A farmer cannot do this. A farmer is a price taker, not a price maker. When a British farmer harvests their wheat, they do not tell the market what it costs them to grow it. They ask the market what it is willing to pay, and the market decides that price based on what is happening in Ukraine, what the weather is doing in South America, and what the harvest looks like in North America. If Russia has a bumper crop of wheat and floods the global market, the price of British wheat collapses. It does not matter that your fertilizer bill doubled and your diesel bill tripled. The market does not care about your input costs. You can spend £500 growing a ton of wheat and find that the global market is only willing to pay you £200 for it. If you are a livestock farmer or dairy farmer, your price maker is usually a supermarket. 4 or 5 massive retail chains control the vast majority of food purchasing in the United Kingdom. Their entire business model is based on offering the lowest possible prices to consumers to maintain market share. They achieve this by squeezing their suppliers mercilessly. A dairy farmer enters into a contract with a processor who supplies a supermarket. The price the farmer receives per liter of milk is often calculated to fractions of a penny. For years, the farm gate price of milk hovered perilously close to or even below the actual cost of production. Supermarkets demand perfect consistency, perfect aesthetics, and continuous supply. But they shift all the weather risk, disease risk, and input cost risk onto the farmer. If a supermarket decides it wants to run a price war on chicken or pork, the margins are ultimately compressed at the farm level. The farmer takes the financial beating so the supermarket can offer a cheap Sunday roast. Let us look at a realistic financial model for a typical 500-acre arable farm in the east of England. You are growing winter wheat, barley, and oilseed rape. A good yield of winter wheat is about 3.5 tons per acre. Across 200 acres of wheat, you produce 700 tons. If the market price is £200 per ton, your gross revenue from wheat is £140,000. Now, deduct the costs for that specific crop. Seed costs £10,000. Fertilizer costs £30,000. Sprays for weeds and diseases cost £25,000. Fuel and contracting costs add another £15,000. Your gross margin looks like £60,000. But that is before you have paid for the machinery finance, the insurance, the accountant, the maintenance of the farm buildings, the water rates, the hedging, the ditching, and the interest on your working capital overdraft. By the time you subtract the fixed costs of simply existing as a farming business, the net profit from growing crops is frequently zero or a negative number. How has this system survived if growing food inherently loses money? The answer is subsidies. For decades, the economics of British farming were entirely underpinned by the European Union Common Agricultural Policy, specifically the Basic Payment Scheme. Under this system, a farmer received a payment based simply on how much land they farmed. It was effectively an annual check for keeping land in agricultural condition. For a 500-acre farm, this payment could easily be £40,000 to £50,000 a year. That payment was the profit. Let me repeat that because it is the most important fact in British agriculture. For the average farm, the money made from selling crops or livestock covered the costs of production, and the government subsidy was the only thing the farmer actually took home to live on. But Brexit changed the entire structure of this arrangement. The United Kingdom left the Common Agricultural Policy, and the government is currently phasing out the Basic Payment Scheme. It is being reduced every year and will soon disappear entirely. In its place, the government introduced the Environmental Land Management Schemes. This represents a fundamental shift in what the state pays farmers to do. The new system does not pay you just for farming. It pays you for delivering public goods. It pays you to plant trees, to restore wetlands, to let hedges grow wild, to manage soils for carbon capture, and to create habitats for wildlife. To replace the money they are losing from the old subsidy system, farmers now have to enter complex agreements where they essentially agree to stop farming parts of their land and start managing it for biodiversity instead. The paperwork is staggering, the compliance is strict, and the financial returns often do not fully replace what was lost. The arithmetic of the British farm is being rewritten in real time, and thousands of farms are discovering that the new math simply does not add up to a viable business. This structural crisis leads every farm consultant and bank manager to offer the exact same piece of advice: diversification. If farming loses money, you must use the farm to do something else. This is why when you drive through the countryside today, every other farm seems to have a farm shop, a cafe, a wedding venue, a petting zoo, or a field full of luxury glamping pods. On paper, diversification looks brilliant. Instead of selling a potato to a supermarket for 2 pence, you turn it into artisan chips, put it in a branded bag, and sell it in your farm shop for £3. You bypass the commodity market and capture the retail margin. But here is the hidden trap of diversification. You are no longer a farmer. You are now running a retail and hospitality business. Setting up a proper farm shop with a butchery counter, a cafe, and a car park requires planning permission, which is notoriously difficult to get in rural areas. It requires a massive capital investment, often £500,000 or more, which means taking on more debt. Crucially, it requires managing the general public. You need retail staff, chefs, baristas, and cleaners. You have to deal with environmental health inspections, public liability insurance, human resources, and marketing. Many farmers who are brilliant at growing crops or managing livestock are entirely unsuited to managing a hospitality business. They end up working 80 hours a week on the farm and another 40 hours worrying about why the coffee machine in the cafe is broken and why the weekend staff have called in sick. The glamping pods require cleaning. The wedding venue requires marketing. Diversification can save a farm, but it destroys the lifestyle the farmer actually wanted when they entered the industry. Then there is the sheer physical and mental toll of the work itself, which is never accounted for in the economic models. Farming is not a job you clock out of. It is a biological process that does not care about weekends, holidays, or your physical exhaustion. During harvest, an arable farmer might work 18-hour days for 3 weeks straight, fueled by adrenaline and panic, knowing that a single rainstorm could ruin a year of income. During lambing season, a sheep farmer sleeps in shifts, checking the sheds every 2 hours through the freezing nights of February and March. The weather is a constant, terrifying variable. A drought in spring stunts the crops. A wet autumn means you cannot get the tractors onto the fields to plant next year's seeds without destroying the soil structure. You are gambling hundreds of thousands of pounds every year on the premise that the British weather will cooperate. And increasingly, with changing climate patterns, it does not. When you add up the massive capital required, the volatile input costs, the dictated sale prices, the disappearing subsidies, and the brutal physical labor, the return on capital employed in a traditional farming business is abysmal. It is often between 1% and 2%. If you sold a £5 million farm and put the money into the safest government bonds, you would make significantly more money with absolutely zero risk and zero physical labor. So why does anyone do it? Why do families cling to these businesses when every spreadsheet tells them to sell up and walk away? Because a farm is rarely just a business. It is a legacy. It is an identity. Many British farms have been in the same family for 3, 4, or 5 generations. The current farmer grew up walking those fields with their father, who walked them with their father. The pressure to not be the generation that loses the farm is a psychological weight that defies rational economic behavior. Farmers will subsidize the farm with outside jobs. The husband might drive a truck at night while the wife works as a teacher during the day, pouring their external salaries directly into the farm account just to keep the overdraft from breaching its limit. They will live in a freezing farmhouse with peeling paint, denying themselves holidays and new clothes, just to ensure the machinery finance is paid and the seed is bought for the next year. They are captive to the land. This is the ultimate paradox of the British farm. It looks like a picture of independent, self-sufficient prosperity. In reality, it is a highly vulnerable, heavily indebted operation caught in a vice between global commodity markets on one side and aggressive supermarket cartels on the other, kept alive only by government interventions that are currently being dismantled. The people who survive and make genuine money in modern farming fall into 2 camps. The first are the massive agribusinesses, corporate operations farming 10,000 acres across multiple counties, using economies of scale to negotiate better prices on fertilizer, and employing specialist agronomists and grain traders to squeeze every fraction of a % of margin out of the market. They treat farming strictly as a mathematical optimization problem. The second group are the highly agile niche producers who have entirely exited the commodity system. They do not sell milk to a massive processor. They make high-value artisan cheese and sell it directly to high-end restaurants in London. They do not grow generic wheat. They grow heritage grains, mill it themselves, and sell the flour to boutique bakeries. They have stopped playing a game they cannot win and invented a new game where they control the pricing. But this requires exceptional entrepreneurial skill, marketing brilliance, and a location that provides access to affluent consumers willing to pay premium prices for the story behind their food. For the traditional middle-sized family farm, the squeeze is tightening every year. The older generation is retiring, and the younger generation is looking at the numbers, looking at the 80-hour weeks, and quietly deciding that they would rather work in finance or engineering in the city. The land will not go to waste. It will be bought by the mega farms, or it will be bought by investment funds looking for carbon credits, or it will be bought by city executives who want a playground for the weekend and a tax shelter for their wealth. The fields will still be green when you drive past on a Sunday. The tractors will still be moving across the horizon, but the economic machinery driving them will be completely unrecognizable from the family farm you think you are looking at. If you found this breakdown valuable, and you want to understand the real economics behind the industries and traditions that shape British life, subscribe to Money Framework British. We examine the numbers that others ignore and reveal the brutal machinery behind the money. New analysis every week. Hit subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.